Hello, everyone. This is Ivan Misner, founder of BNI, and we are on live, Facebook Live. Ask Ivan. So as you jump on, please let me know you're here. I see Dana and Raji. Tell me where you're from. I see Estrada from France, Mary from Mexico, Icaro, where are you from? Tell me where you're from. Sylvie, hi Sylvie. It is great to see you here. BNI India, Usman. Laura from Athens, Georgia. Let me see if I can make this bigger. You know, the teenagers at Facebook keep changing the technology. So people with a lot of gray hair like me have challenges with some of this. Okay, who else do we have? We have Suresh from Dubai, Jackie, Hudson Valley, New York. We've got Chin from Cambodia, Surya from India, Fitch from Taiwan. You know, I've been to, I think, every one of these places that we're talking about. Kamalika and Hien. Where are y'all from? Brazil, India, Indonesia. I haven't been to Indonesia yet. India, Mexico, Philippines. I haven't been to the Philippines yet. I need to get to the Philippines. Ruby! Here's Ruby, my Aunt Ruby from Big Spring, Texas. Ruby, it is great to have you here. What a surprise to see you. I am glad that you joined us today. Let's see, we've got more from India, Cape Town, South Africa. Love South Africa. India, Taiwan, Thailand. I've been to Thailand several times. Portugal, I've been there. Cambodia, I haven't made it to Cambodia. Japan, I've been to Japan several times. South Africa, Holland. Wow, what a great turnout. I am so pleased to see all of you here. Keep throwing in the chat box all the places that you're from. Give me your name and tell me where you're from. I want to hear it all. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you have a question, please put your question in the chat box, and I'll try to answer as many questions as I possibly can. This is an Ask Ivan event. So come up with some great questions. You can ask me anything. The only dumb question is the unasked question. And Dana will be taking the questions and sending them to me via another platform. So I'll be getting them as they come in, and I'll try and cover as many of them as I can. I want to thank Dana for her help today and every day. Dana is my assistant. Everybody needs a Dana, but you're not allowed to have Dana. She's mine. So she's fantastic, and she'll be giving me messages. I also want to, the questions that you have, I also want to thank Scion, the Scion team for, social media team for helping to set this up and also doing much of my social media. So I appreciate the Scion social media team and, of course, Dana. And I want to thank you, the followers on my Facebook page, for taking the time to be here today. And please make sure to ask some questions. Whatever burning question you have, I'm happy to answer. I really am. I've got a few minutes of things that I want to say, and then I'm going to open it up. Probably really like a minute and a half of things that I want to say, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So I'll be very brief. In 2018, I predicted that BNI would move to online in the future. In 2018, I published a piece for Entrepreneur, and I talked about it from the perspective of how technology was advancing. That technology, 3D technology, the metaverse, holographic imaging was advancing at such a rate that it was inevitable, absolutely inevitable, that networking groups would move to an online platform. Now, totally online, I don't know, but I knew that it was going to move towards online. because of the technology. Well, 2020 hit, COVID hit the world, and thank goodness BNI was thinking about the future of networking and of technology, because the organization was able to transition almost immediately from country to country to country as COVID spread. We were able to move online. And wow, it was a disruption. I mean, it was an incredible disruption, COVID. And it certainly happened, forced many organizations to move online much quicker than we anticipated. And at the same time, I think it's really important to think about the few, but some of the positive aspects of being able to move online. One of them is, could you imagine if COVID hit the world in 1990 instead of 2020? Wow. So many more businesses would be out of business. Companies would be struggling even more than they did through COVID. There would be so many more deaths because of COVID. And so it was a tough couple of years. It's still tough for a lot of people. I get that. But I'm thankful that we were able to have this happen in 2020 versus in 1990. I've already taken more than a minute and a half, so let me just give you a couple more things, and then I'm going to start tackling the questions that Dana is sending here. We are transitioning the organization. We did transition the organization to online. It was a massive task. I'm proud of it. Now there's disruption again in networking groups in BNI, because some groups are deciding whether to go online, stay in person, or be a hybrid group. Many groups have made this decision, but some have not. Here's the message I'd like to give all of you that are thinking about your networking opportunities. These are good choices. These are inevitable choices. Change does add an element of disruption to all of our lives, but this change was change that would have happened with or without COVID. It just happened quicker because of COVID. One of the things I learned in going through all of this is that BNI is truly a beacon of hope in a sea of fear. We have had to deal with so many challenging things that we have, I think, been a beacon of hope for many businesses. Last year alone, the organization did over 12 million referrals and generated over 18 billion, billion with a B, 18 billion US dollars worth of business. I am really proud, and that's business for our members. I'm really proud of this organization and what it has done during these really challenging times. Okay, I'm happy to start taking questions, and I see that we have a few. And Kita asks, how am I feeling? I'm feeling great. Some of you may know that, I've had this pesky cancer diagnosis for a long time. I treated it holistically. I was told I had 6 months. 10 years ago, I was told I had 6 months to get surgery. And I managed to go 10 years without having to do any surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. I finally decided that it was time to take a Western medicine route. And I recently did radiation. I feel great. The doctor says he doesn't need to see me for 6 months. He said that about a month ago, so I don't have to see the doctor for another 5 months. He felt that it went good, and it was good. I was very tired from the radiation, but it was all good. I feel fantastic. Honestly, if I hadn't had a biopsy, I wouldn't know I had a problem. So I feel really good. And Kita, thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it. Robbie asks, how do we persuade members to attend training regularly? Well, that's a fantastic question. And I think the answer to that question, as with most questions, is that you got to start with the why. People don't care about how until they understand why. Why do I need to go to training? Why do I need to do member success program training? Why do I need to go to leadership team training? Leadership team training is pretty easy. When I'm talking to a chapter and they're saying that their leadership team doesn't want to go to training, I say, hey, do you want to fly in a jet where the pilot wasn't trained? And people laugh and they say, well, no, of course not. Of course not. Well, when you are in a BNI chapter, when you're in any networking group, your leadership team are the pilots and co-pilots. If they're not trained, they're going to run your chapter right into the ground. No question about it. I've seen it. Listen, I've been doing this 37 years. I earned all this gray hair. I'm here to tell you that the chapter will be more successful if the majority or all of the members get the training. One of the things that we discovered is that retention goes up significantly when all the members of a chapter have gone through member success program training. When they've done that training, the retention goes up. Why? Because people are equipped to utilize network effectively. Why pay the money and spend all the time if you don't get a little bit of training to put it to effective use? How many times have we worked at companies where we got no orientation, we were thrown into the lion's den and told, work? Well, we don't do that in BNI. We want to provide opportunities for people to be their best selves at networking. And luckily, we've got a ton of content to do that. BNIpodcast.com, over 700 podcasts. My blog, probably 1,500, maybe 2,000 blogs I've done in the last 15 years. My articles for Entrepreneur, the books that we have. There's so much content. Be better at what you do. That's why one of the core values for BNI is lifelong learning. I hope that answers the question. That's the why. The why is critical. And the why is you will generate more referrals if you get the proper training. Great question. Thank you. Rosie asks, I'd love to know the best way to invite visitors. Okay, this is fantastic. Dana, I want you to find 2 podcasts and post them on here. They're the podcasts where we're interviewing, and then the podcast where it is how to do the interviewing. Those 2 podcasts, if you could post them. And I don't know if you guys are noticing, but Dana is already posting some things that I have been talking about. She's, I think, posted the, here we go. She's posted my blog, and I know she's posted a couple of other things. So look in her comments for the posts that we're talking about. So how do you invite people? I think the best way is one of the posts that she's going to put up here in just a few moments if she hasn't already, and that is we're interviewing. Look, I think sometimes we come on too strong when we invite people to BNI. There's so many members that are really passionate about BNI, and I love that about all of you. I think it's fantastic, but sometimes we might come on just a little bit too strong. And I've seen people who's like, oh, I'm in this networking organization. You have got to come to this networking. It's an amazing organization. Look, if you can't make it, I know it's every week, and I know it's, for a lot of you, it's early in the morning. It's okay, but I'll pick you up on the corner of 3rd and Main. I'll drive you to the meeting if you want. Okay, don't do that. Don't do that. Look, you're doing people a favor when you invite them to BNI. They're not doing you a favor by coming. I want that to sit on you for a moment. You're doing people a favor. There it is, episode 547. I just saw it come up. That's one of the podcasts. Episode 547, and the other episode is one is on how to do this process that I'm talking about. The other is some examples of the kind of questions that you would ask in an interview. And so my advice is that when you talk to people, is that you say something like this. I'm in a referral organization. We get together on a regular basis. We're interviewing people in your profession right now to try and find someone that we can give all of our referrals to. I think you might make a good candidate. Now, that's a whole different way to invite people into BNI. It flips it on its head. It goes from, oh, you have got to do this, to, hey, I'm in a referral group. We're interviewing people who we think might be good people that we could give all of our referrals to. You might be a good candidate. The unstated comment is, we might not pick you because we're interviewing. So look for people in a particular profession bring them in. And by the way, sometimes people will say, they start asking a lot of questions. Where does it meet? How often does it meet? What time does it meet? You got to give them, certainly got to tell them where they meet and what time. But you also got to say, look, we're just doing an interview. Come check it out. Bring plenty of business cards. If you're meeting in person, bring plenty of business cards. Or if you're meeting online, either way, you want to say, make sure to be, to be able to tell everybody what it is that you do. Come and check it out. Let us talk to you. You talk to us and see if it's a good fit. And whatever you do, don't start giving them a bunch of stuff. Oh my goodness, we have so much stuff now. We give visitor information sheets and we give brochures and we send them to our website. Just get them to come to a meeting. Do you know I opened 20 chapters of BNI back in 1985? 20 chapters. I had no materials. None. Zero. I opened 20 chapters. And you know what I had? One sheet of paper. That's all I had. It was the agenda typed up by me on an IBM Selectric typewriter. Back then I typed Columbus style, seek out and discover. I didn't type well. That's all I had. People would say, do you have brochures? No. Do you have any materials at all? I said, I don't have anything. You got to come to a meeting. You got to experience it. It's amazing. You're going to get a lot of business. You bring plenty of cards. They, well, you have to have something. Well, I have an agenda. I say, well, let me see the agenda. They'd look at the agenda and they go, well, this doesn't tell me a lot. And I'm like, I know, it doesn't. That's why you have to come to a meeting. And so the key is just tell them, that, and then you got to interview them, but tell them you're looking for people in their profession. They might make a good candidate. You want to give all your referrals to them. Come and check out the group and let us chat with you. Then you want to actually interview them. And I think episode 769, 769 is I've invited everyone. And I'm sure, here we go, 547 might be the one. One of them is what I just described to you. Another is actual interview questions. There's a PDF of actual interview questions. Now remember, interview them, don't interrogate them. And so when you look at this list of questions, don't ask them all. It's too many. Pick and choose. Get some basic information. Get them to talk. When you get people to talk, you have a good sense of whether they'll make a good member or not. Great question. I hope that answers your questions. And that came from Rosie. Octavio, what are the activities that an ambassador does in a chapter? Look, ambassadors vary substantially from region to region around the world. I can tell you what my idea with ambassadors was when I created it many years ago. However, you got to talk to your local director to see how they are using the ambassador program. For me, the ambassador program was a peer counselor. Not somebody who works with BNI, but they're a peer. And they can visit multiple chapters as an ambassador, and they're there to help guide, coach, and assist the chapter on a peer-to-peer coaching basis, as opposed to being someone from BNI per se. And so that was my idea, was to have mentors, cross-chapter mentors, somebody from another chapter who's got some experience, who can come to a chapter and just help, support, give love, care, and attention to the group. That was the intention with the ambassador for me. Some directors do use them in different ways, so I would urge you to talk to your local BNI director about that. Okay, from Somaya. I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. You can call me Dr. Misner if you'd like. They have a question for me. Why networking? When did you realize that networking is a successful tool for entrepreneurs? That's a great question. Not a lot of people ask me that question quite that way. So before I started BNI, I went to a lot of networking groups, and some of the networking groups that I went to were incredibly mercenary. I'd go there and I felt like I had been slimed. Everyone was trying to sell to me. I hated those groups. Then I went to these other groups that were totally social. It was happy hour and hors d'oeuvres. Nobody was doing business. I didn't like those. And so I went to these two different kinds of groups and I didn't like them very much. What I wanted was a group that focused on business but wasn't mercenary, and a group that was relational but not totally social. And so I kind of put those two concepts together, and that glue that would hold it together is our principal core value of givers gain. I knew networking worked. I went looking for a network that had this philosophy and that wasn't totally mercenary, wasn't totally social. I knew it worked because I used to train, and here's the part where not many people know this. I used to train. I was a management consultant. I was once hired by a marketing department to train their marketing employees, their sales people, on cold calling. Yes, cold calling. I did that. I trained on it. I told people how to, it was way before mobile phones, by the way. I told them how to cold call, and I trained them on cold calling, and I did cold calling. Cold calling works. It works. I got no complaints with whether it works or not. I just hated it. Absolutely despised it. I didn't want to ever do another cold call for the rest of my life. There had to be a better way, and that was networking. I got most of my business through referrals anyway, so that's what I really wanted to focus on, was referrals and speaking engagements. I got a lot of business out of speaking engagements. So as an entrepreneur, as a business consultant, I realized that networking was really important. The problem is we don't teach this in colleges and universities. We give kids bachelor's degrees in marketing, and they don't know how to sell, and they certainly don't know how to network. And so that's why I created BNI, and that's why I started writing books, because, by golly, if the schools aren't teaching people how to network, I will. Great question. I hope that answers the question. Butch asks, Ivan, is the late Jeff Kirkwood's hat on the desk behind you? Oh, Butch, thank you for asking that. No, this isn't Jeff's hat. I've got a hat. I should have brought it down. I have a hat that was given to me from the Australian directors. I love that hat. It's a leather hat, very similar to this. This hat was given to me by the Dallas, Texas. It's a Stetson, and it was given to me by the Dallas, Texas BNI region probably 20 years ago. And I do have a hat from Australia. I forgot to bring it down. On the next Facebook Live, I'll remember to have the hat. I think you can see it. I don't know if you can see it. Let me move this out of the way. Yeah, you can see it. So yeah, that Dallas, Texas, it's a Stetson. Stetson makes a nice hat. I'm not a big hat wearer, but let me tell you, that's a nice hat. Okay. Kamalika, Ivan, could you help us understand how to make improvements on continuous learning? It's a great question. How do we do lifelong learning? I think the education coordinators are an important part of that, a really important part of that. And I'll tell you, and Dana, you might have a hard time finding this podcast. I don't remember what it's called. But it was an education coordinator told me they did this once. They weren't getting interaction from the chapter. The chapter was not engaging in the content that was in the podcast or that the education coordinator was talking about. And it was a new education coordinator taking over the role, and the education coordinator said to everybody, so we have a choice. I can come every week to the meetings and have a short lecture, 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes, have a short lecture on the topic that is appropriate to the chapter, or I could come in with the topic, and we can all discuss it and how that topic applies to us. Which would you prefer? Me doing the lecture or you dialoguing on this topic? Well, he knew what the answer would be. He knew what the answer. These are entrepreneurs. They don't want to get a lecture. They want a dialogue. And that was the overwhelming response. This isn't a podcast. That was the overwhelming response. The overwhelming response was, we want a dialogue. And he said, great, I was hoping you would say that. And he was hoping that they would say that. Then came the kicker. Now remember, nobody was listening to the podcast, pretty much no one. So he said, I'd love to do a dialogue. And so we'll pick topics that are important. And then I'm going to pick a podcast. I'm going to assign the podcast to you for the next week. Next week, we're going to talk about this podcast. In order for you to talk, you have to listen to the podcast or read the transcript. You know, we do transcripts. The reason we do transcripts is so that they become searchable. You can search on topics. So you can do a search on BNI podcast on any topic because we do the transcripts. So the education coordinator said, we'll have a dialogue on a topic, but you have to listen to the podcast or read the transcript. So you must start, every statement's got to begin when Ivan said, or when Ivan's guest said, or, you know, this issue was brought up in the podcast, here's how I feel about it. So you got to say something that shows you listen to it. Otherwise, if you don't, you can't talk. And he held people to it. And guess what happened? The overwhelming majority of the chapters started listening to the podcasts. And then instead of the lecture, they had a dialogue. This is to me the perfect example of lifelong learning. You know, Benjamin Franklin once said that if you empty your purse into your head, you are gaining something that can never be taken away from you. And that's knowledge. Well, you don't have to empty your purse into your head for BNI. This stuff's all out there free. Facebook Lives, the podcast, my YouTube page. By the way, maybe Dana, you can put in my YouTube page if you haven't already. All of this stuff is there. My blog, it's all there. It's free. And lifelong learning, it's the really successful people in life that practice lifelong learning. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. Okay, I gotta answer these questions maybe a little faster. Is it Prasanna? Prasanna says, should there be any other obstacles in executing things online except for electricity or internet? Your thoughts? I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Should there be any other obstacles in executing things online? I know I have a podcast or two or a blog or two on doing meetings online, and maybe Dana can find that. I mean, I think there are some things that are challenges. You know, when people show up in their sweatshirt, and look, let me tell you something. I put on this, collared shirt and sport coat 20 minutes ago, well, 40 minutes ago, I was in a t-shirt. And so I think, you got to show up professionally. I think that's important. You have to have the right equipment. You have to have a camera. You got to have a good microphone. And don't get distracted, people. I know people go to networking meetings and they're not paying attention. And I think that's a huge mistake because if you're paying attention to what people say, that's when you learn how to give a referral to somebody. So when you're not paying attention, you're not learning how to refer each other. And so I think these are some of the obstacles with online, which, oh, by the way, in person, you kind of have the same obstacles, but it's not as obvious. I mean, I've seen people in person, texting people instead of paying attention to the person speaking. So you got to pay attention to what's going on. I don't know if that's what you meant, but I hope that helps a little bit. Lisa asks, in the name of integrity for data collection, is there a minimum of a quality of time a one-to-one should last? I know how important the quality of one-to-one needs to be. Well, Lisa, that's a really good question. And, BNI, people already complain, BNI's got a lot of rules. We don't have a rule on that one. But I'll give you my belief. And we don't have a rule for everything. People already think that we have too many rules. But the rules are important. You can't be successful without systems and processes and rules. Ice hockey. Hockey without rules would be boxing on ice. So you got to have rules. And you ask a completely valid question. My answer to that question is, I think at least 30 minutes. And by the way, I just did the gains exchange. And maybe, Dana, you can do a post on the gains exchange. I just did the gains exchange for last week for the Transformational Leadership Council, an organization that Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, just did. Jack Canfield started, and I just did the gains exchange. And I had 90 minutes to do the whole thing, including explaining it and then talking about it afterwards. So I did them in about 35-minute increments, so they could do two. So they could do the games exchange twice. So I think 30 to 35 minutes is sort of the minimum. The ideal would be an hour, because the idea is to find overlapping areas of interest in a one-to-one, to learn more about that person so you can make a connection and develop a friendship. So I recommend the games exchange and use of one-to-ones, and I think a one-to-one should be at least 30 minutes, no less. I also think, and I've changed my description of the games exchange over the last few years. I don't think I should do my goals, accomplishments, interests, networks, and skills, and then you do your goals, accomplishments, interests, networks, and skills, or vice versa. And the reason for that is I've heard more and more that the person who goes first takes too much time. So for the last several years, I've been saying, you do your goals, I'll do my goals. You do your accomplishments, I'll do my accomplishments. You do your interests. And by the way, interest is probably the most important, because that's where you develop friendships. And then I do mine. And so we go back and forth. That's what I recommend. Lisa, great question. Thank you for asking it. And we don't have a policy. That is my opinion. Some people that think that I have a little experience and have an informed opinion, so hopefully that will help. Mary asks, it has been difficult to grow our chapter. We are 21 members. We don't have visitors. Is our area of opportunity. What can you suggest? Mary, send a private message on my public Facebook page, that question, and I'll send you something that will help you. Also, for all of you on this topic, talk to your director. Your director is there to help you with questions like this. And I would urge you to bring in your director, because there's only so much I can do in 2, 3, 4 minutes. I'll give you 2 or 3, 4 minutes on this topic, but you need to go deeper, and I can send you something that would help a little bit. But here's the things that you want to do, and the first is a shock. I call it addition by subtraction, and Dana will post that. She knows where it is. Addition by subtraction. It's a shock because people go, wait a minute. We only have 21 members. What I suggest is you actually need to sometimes cut back the members in order to grow. All too often, chapters, especially small chapters, have what I call minnows, members in name only. And they are actually more of an anchor than an engine to the chapter. And it's actually better to sometimes cut back to grow. So it's called addition by subtraction. I learned that by watching my late wife trim our rose bushes. And I was like, why are you cutting them back so far? And I had no idea. She said, well, rose bushes really grow when you cut them back. Wow. Okay. Didn't know that. Chapters really grow when you cut them back. And then it's a number of other things, like doing one-to-ones. One-to-ones are really important. Learning how to invite people, like the invitation, the inviting visitors, we're interviewing technique. All of this has to be taught to the members. Really understanding the core values of the organization. So those are just a handful of things, but it has to start with having the right people in the room. And you begin with that, and the rest can fall into place. I could spend an hour just on this one topic. I hope that helps you get started. My point of view, okay, so second question, this is from Octavio. My point of view, what is the best strategy for member retention? Two things, and these are both data-based answers. That is, the data shows this to be true. Number one, well, actually, number two, the second most important thing for retention in a chapter is member success program training. People that have completed the member success program training are significantly more likely to stay for a second, third, fourth, fifth year, because they start off quicker. It is a force multiplier. We asked the question earlier about how do we convince people to do training? Well, if you want to get business quicker, get the training. That seems like unbelievably obvious to me, but I believe in lifelong learning. So member success program training number 2. That did not surprise me when we learned that from BNI Connect, from the data that we have in BNI Connect. The number one way, however, surprised the heck out of me. Did not see this coming. The number one way to increase member strategy or member retention is for a member to invite someone who joins. I'm going to repeat that. The number one strategy for increasing member retention is to have a member invite someone who actually joins. Now, when I read that, I was like, what? What? That makes no sense. And the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Why? Because people do business with people they know, like, and trust. We move from visibility to credibility to profitability based on the relationships that we have. When you invite someone to BNI and they join, you've got one of your friends there. You've got somebody that you care about, that they care about you. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, this makes total sense. If I'm going to be in a room that have a number of my friends, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to abandon them. I'm going to stay. And so the number one factor to increase retention in a chapter, which I did not see coming, but based on the data that we were able to mine from BNI Connect, the number one strategy is inviting someone who actually joins. The number two strategy is go to MSP training. That's a fantastic question, Octavio, and I'm really glad that you asked it. Okay. PD Barcelona, a question. Do we have plans to combine all the apps of BNI into one, BNI Connect, BNI Business Builder, reporting to you, and other manual process? Yeah, we do. We do want to do that, a one-step platform. It's really complicated, though. It's complicated because we're dealing with several dozen languages, multiple data protection regulations, languages that go left to right, right to left. So it's more complicated than one might think, but it absolutely is on the lengthy list of things that we want to do where there's one login. It might even be on our list to do in the next year or two, but don't hold me to that. I could be wrong. But yes, a great point. You're absolutely correct. We agree with you. It's just a little more complicated than you think. Okay. Ofer asks, how do you invite big companies? What's in it for them if they join? So, Ofer, if you're going to invite a big company, it's got to be the salesperson for a big company. A C-suite executive, a chief executive officer, a chief operating officer, a chief marketing officer, they're not going to join BNI. Not for a multi-million-dollar company. They're not. And you think, well, why not? Because they're no longer in sales. Not really. They come in as the big guns with some sales, but they're not out there day in and day out doing sales. So what you want are the salespeople for the big companies. What you want is to find an executive who recognizes that networking is important and recognizes that their sales team need to participate in a networking organization. So whenever I've had an opportunity to talk about to executives of large organizations, I would always say to them, you need your salespeople in BNI. And that's the way you get them to join BNI, because they're out there where the rubber meets the road on a daily basis trying to make sales. So stop trying to get chief executive officers from multi-million-dollar companies to be in BNI. It's not what they do anymore. They are working on the business, not in the business. And they're certainly not doing day-to-day sales. Trust me on this, I've experienced it. I've gone from being out there where the rubber meets the road and having to sell and do business to really being the chief visionary officer and looking at things from a strategic point of view. If you focus on the salespeople for the large companies, you'll get them. We have many, many large companies. And don't forget, large companies like mortgage companies, insurance companies, real estate companies, they're all in BNI. I mean, really active in BNI. And they are, in many cases, billion-dollar companies. Well, who is it that joins those? It's the mortgage broker who's trying to, who's out there trying to get mortgages. It's the real estate agent who's actually selling the houses. These are the people. It's usually the, an assistant branch manager or development officer of a bank that's actually a member. But those are billion-dollar companies. So we do have many of them in BNI. Go about it that way. Ferreira, I think you'll find that will work. Estratus asks, I would like to know some more about the happy business method. I will be the next president of my chapter. I'd like to have some information from the master himself. Well, that's very kind of you. The problem is I don't know what the happy business method is. Sometimes people create stuff. They just make things up, and I don't know what that is. That I would talk to your local director. My guess is it's something that the local director did. If it's something that came from BNI Global or your national office, please instant message me so I can connect with the global office or national office to find out what that is, because I've never heard of it. I'm glad you asked the question, though. Ryan, how do you feel about the meeting where half the members are online and the other half are in person? It's not one of the three options that we approve. The three options we approve are completely online, completely in person, or a hybrid of 3 weeks online, 1 week in person. The reason that I don't like the half in person and half online, and the reason that it's not one of the approved methods, is the people online, they just can't hear what's going on. Some of them just can't hear what's going on. And, either that or you got to be, passing a laptop around. You may not have good internet service in the facility. All the chapters, take a deep breath. You got to pick. If you want to work, if you want it to work, you got to pick. Be an online, be an in-person. Or be a hybrid where you do, which by the way, I love. If I were doing sales today, I'd go hybrid because I believe in person, but man, online is so easy. But meeting someone in person is so perfect. And so I love hybrid. I love in person, and I'm totally good with online, but you got to pick because I'm pretty, there are very few things in my career that I have felt certain about. I feel pretty certain that a group that tries to meet both online and in person simultaneously isn't going to last more than a couple years at the most. It just isn't the most effective way to do it. So you pick. That's my advice. I know you might not like that opinion, but that is my opinion, and that is what we are asking chapters to do. And this is where I opened. I opened the very Ask Ivan event by saying there's change that has to take place and decisions have to be made, and that's going to create chaos. And you're going to lose some members when you pick one or the other or hybrid. You're going to lose some members. It's okay. For the long-term health of the chapter, pick a process. And if half and half, feel one way or the other, the hybrid might be a good way to go. But pick and know you're going to lose some members. Take a deep breath. Eggbach. Everything's going to be okay. Tear the Band-Aid off. Go for it. But get input, okay? And be diplomatic about it. Don't create a battle, a huge battle, more than you might have already. When I was 13 years old, my mother gave me this paperweight. It's on my desk and has been on my desk for 50 years. It says 53 years. It says, the diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. She said, son, I love you, but you're a bull in a china shop. You just knock people over. You got to learn how to work with people more effectively. This is about collaboration, not manipulation. So, Ryan, be diplomatic. Guide and coach the chapter into making a decision. Okay, when can we see you in India? Usman asks. Well, Usman, I would love to be in India in 2023. I'm doing my best to see if that can happen. For those of you who don't know, I am going to be in Singapore at our November convention. Maybe Dana, you can put a link for anyone who wants to come to Singapore. And look, we're expecting 3,000 people in person and 3,000 online. It's going to be a huge event. The online people will just basically get a feed of the presentation live. They'll also have access to the recording. So come to Singapore. And when you come to Singapore, say hi. You know, so many people, it's a long line, I know, but come, say hi. Or if I'm walking around, I'm happy to take photographs. Take photographs, connect with me. I love meeting BNI members. I love meeting them in person. So come, say hello. I look forward to seeing you in Singapore. And I do promise to come back to India. India is one of the largest markets for BNI. And interestingly enough, even though we have more members in the US, I have more followers on Facebook from India than I do from the US, which I find interesting. Robin says, would I ever visit your chapter in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada? If I caught a chapter of BNI, Robin, every week, it would take more than 30 years to get to all the chapters. So I really stopped going to chapter meetings years ago because, you know, chapters get upset that I didn't come to them. I go to regional events and I ask that the chapters come to the regional event and meet me there. It's the only, a good referral for me would be a cloning clinic. If you could clone me so that I could, you know, have lots of copies and go to all the chapters, that would be awesome. So I do events in Canada from time to time, and I'd love to meet you. Hopefully you can come to the event. Thomas asked, what was the best referral that I know about? There was, I don't know all the details of it, but one of the best referrals that I ever heard was a jeweler that had a $1 million referral with not just one piece of jewelry, but it was multiple sales of their jewelry within an organization, and it was well over $1 million. That's just one. There have been many other $1 million referrals or more. Aaron asked, do you have any additional insight to go along with the classification cowboy? So Dana, maybe you could post the message. I see my Eggbach podcast there. Dana, maybe you can post the podcast on classification cowboy. A classification cowboy is somebody who tries to take up more than one classification. And they do it because they have a scarcity mentality instead of an abundance mentality. And I really started learning this when I went to a chapter in New York that had 7 lawyers. Yes. No, let me think this out. They had 5 lawyers. They had 5 lawyers. Yes, 5 lawyers. And I saw all 5 of them at a regional event. And I said, wow, 5 of you, does that work? And they're like, fantastic, it works great. You know, one does family law, one does corporate law, one does wills and trusts. They all had a specialty. And I said, yeah, but you're all lawyers. They said, yeah, but we want to do what we love doing. And we want to be an expert at family law or whatever. And so I don't, you know, one of them said, I don't want to do wills and trusts. I just don't want to do it. Can I? Yes. Do I want to? No. I'd rather the will and trust guy give me the family law. And he doesn't want to do family law. He wants to do wills and trusts. And so they all agreed they give each other per capita more referrals than any other 5 people in the chapter. I thought that was amazing. I was in San Francisco and I saw, I saw 3 or 4 lawyers from a chapter at a regional event. And I said, wow, you know, I was in a New York region a couple years ago and they had 5 lawyers. They said, oh, that's no big deal. I said, what? What do you mean? They said, we have 7. They had 7 lawyers in their chapter. That is an abundance mentality. Now, they brought in lawyers that they were absolutely committed to each other, to giving referrals to each other in their specialty. One of them was actually an associate in the law firm. And he says, I don't tell my partners that I give business. I don't tell the partners that I give business to some other attorneys because they're giving me so much business. You know, they don't need to know. I'm getting tons of business. And it works. So check out the Classification Cowboy link and you'll get a better sense of what I'm talking about. Okay. Snahal, I think it's pronounced. And I understand Snahal is one of my Facebook top fans. Thank you. I appreciate all of you who are top fans. They ask, what are 3 essentials of basic networking? Well, I don't know if you mean within BNI or in general, so I'm going to kind of mix it up a little bit. I think the foundation of everything I teach is visibility, credibility, profitability. VCP. You first have to be visible. People have to know who you are. Then and only then can you get to credibility, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it. And then and only then can you get to profitability, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to give you referrals on an ongoing reciprocal basis. The thing is, this takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. People in networking events try to jump over visibility, jump over credibility, get right to profitability. I've had many people who've met me, handed me 3 copies of their business card, introduced themselves to me and said, if you find somebody that could use my business, maybe you'd give them one of my cards. I generally say to them, I'm sorry, what was your name? And they're like, oh, yeah, my name is, it's like, I don't even know you. I don't say this to them. But if you don't know someone, don't give them 3 copies of your card and ask them to refer you. Because when you give a referral, you give a little bit of your reputation away. You refer people you trust. And so you got to get past credibility. Second would be, you got to do one-to-ones. If you really want to get business in networking events and networking organizations, you got to do one-to-ones, particularly in BNI. There's a great podcast on this. Dana will post it about one-to-ones. There is a direct and dramatic linear correlation between doing one-to-ones and getting referrals. People who do one-to-one a month compared to people who do 4 one-to-ones a month. So 1 a month versus 1 a week. The people who do 4 one-to-ones a month give 100% more referrals. Now, there's a podcast on this. It's based on a university study. We have hard data. The people who do 4 a month versus 1 a month give 100% more referrals. But here's the beautiful part. This is the beautiful part. They get 100% more referrals. They get twice as many referrals. One of the absolute basics of networking. Number 3 is you got to nail your weekly presentation. You got to nail it. What happens is people stand up and they just give these general statements, you know, I'm a full service, whatever. You got to get laser specific. You got to, don't shotgun your presentation, sharpshoot it. You got to get laser specific, and maybe Dana, you can put in another podcast about getting laser specific. Those 3 things I think are the basics that work, particularly in BNI. Dennis asks, and we've got about 8 minutes left. I might go a minute or 2 over. Again, about 8 minutes left. Hello, Ivan. How do you move people from being inspired to being inspiring? Yeah, that's a great question. I've never been asked quite in that way. I think, you know, first of all, you didn't use the word motivate, and I appreciate that, because I don't think you can motivate people. I can't motivate you. I can't motivate anyone. People have to motivate themselves. And I think that you can motivate somebody, that you can get someone to motivate themselves by inspiring them. I can't motivate you, but I might be able to inspire you. And if I can inspire you to motivate yourself, then you will go forth and inspire other people. For years I've said, my vision for me in life, the thing I want to do, is I want to inspire people. I want to inspire people who inspire other people. That's what I want. And I think the way to inspire people is to be diplomatic. Diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way, to coach, to guide, to be there, to support, to give people your love, care, and attention. And try not to be too judgmental. It's easy to be very judgmental. Instead, be interested, which is, a spin on what you're talking about. Instead of being interesting, be interested. And And always talk about the why. Why is it important, in your opinion, to do certain things? People don't care about how until they understand why. I hope that's a few examples of how to inspire people. We have time for a couple more questions. Bimal says, gratitude to you for changing the way the world does business. What is the one dream of yours which is still unfulfilled in BNI and you wish us to fulfill the same? Oh, thank you, Bimal. I appreciate that. I want to have 1 million members someday. That's my goal. We're at about 292,000 members. So we have a ways to go. I think we can hit 1 million members in my lifetime. It's a big jump. But if you look at our growth chart, it's mind-boggling how the organization has grown over the last 37 years. 36 years ago, I said I thought it was possible. I told a friend of mine, I went 36 years ago, you didn't have Monsieur Google. I had to go to the library, check out books, figure out populations, and I calculated that we could possibly have 10,000 chapters someday. 10,000 chapters, I said. I told a friend of mine that. I think BNI can someday have 10,000 chapters. He said, well, how many chapters do you have now? This was in the middle of 1986. I said, well, 30. He said, you have 30 chapters and you think you can have 10,000? I said, yeah, I really do. He said, well, it's good to have goals, Ivan. Really good to have goals. And now, honestly, I thought it would take 75 years. I didn't think it would happen in my lifetime. But we hit 10,000 chapters in 2020. We now have 10,800 chapters in 76 countries around the world. My one big dream is to have 1 million members. And you know why? Because I want to make a bigger difference in the world. I want to impact business all around the world. And BNI does that. I mean, $18 billion in business in the trailing 12 months, the last 12 months, from last month to a year ago. We've done over 19 billion US dollars in business. Now, just so you know, $19 billion is more than is more than double the gross domestic product for the country of Liechtenstein. Okay, it's a small country, I know, but still, how cool is that we could generate that much business? I want to help more people in more countries around the world. That's my goal, and I think that when we hit 1 million people, we're really going to be making a substantively larger difference. Okay, Scott asks, what attribute do you see that makes up the most effective chapters globally? Attitude. You got to be willing to follow the process. That's a given. So process is a given. But the one big differentiator is attitude. I see chapters and I see members in chapters. I had a woman once say to me, we got a guy in our chapter where the best thing he could do is call in sick because he is a fun sucker. He just sucks the fun right out of a room. And I just had to laugh over that, but it's true. A couple of members with bad attitudes can bring down an entire chapter. Attitude, attitude, attitude. It's about having a positive attitude and a process to implement that positive attitude. BNI is a beacon of hope in a sea of fear. I started my presentation in talking about that. I believe that. And in order to do that, you've got to have a positive attitude. All right, I've got a couple more things that I've got at least one more question, and then I'm going to end it with a comment or two. If I can just find my comment. So here we go. I'm going to end it with a comment or two, and then I'm going to answer one or two more questions. Let's see. Beth asks, what's my biggest networking aha moment? When I learned that people, myself included, I used to do it, that people use networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity. That was probably my biggest aha moment, where I'm like, I'm guilty of that. I do that. I got to stop doing that. Networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships with other people. It is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It takes time. It takes time. Remember the time confidence curve? Dana, if you have a time confidence curve article, maybe you could put that up. It takes time to build business. That was probably my biggest. All right, there's so many more questions, and I wish I could ask them all. Let's see if I can do some of them quickly. Everest asks, Amit asks from the Sapphire chapter, he's a launch director, kindly share knowledge on building a core team. Oh, wow. That's a big question that I probably can't. I mean, if you take all of the things that I've been talking about, finding people with the right attitude, finding people that believe in the core values of BNI, these are some of the things that I think are critical in building a team. Learning how to inspire people, doing it diplomatically, being a coach. I've talked about all of these things. Take these things and apply them. Maybe, Dana, you can post something about my leadership, the 6 things that make an effective leader, which I know BNI actually put on their Facebook page recently. All right, I'm going to just take 2 or 3 more and wrap. Partha asks, how do you increase your business network through international chapters through BNI Connect? Use BNI Connect. Whatever business you're in, Partha, there's probably a group on BNI Connect. Get on there, connect with people from around the world, and then go visit those chapters, whether it's an online chapter or in person. And remember, don't start by selling to them. Build a little bit of a relationship. Tell people you want to do business globally, but go visit the chapters. We now have with BNI Connect, we have this platform where you can connect with people all around the world. It's a global business, but a local network. And use BNI Connect to find chapters that you can go visit in person or find chapters that you can visit online. Okay, there's so many more questions. Let me just, Laura asks, how has the BNI Foundation changed since Beth's passing? Thank you for asking that question. Elizabeth passed in 2020. 2020 was a hard year for a lot of us, and the foundation is doing well. One of Elizabeth's dreams was to have the endowment. An endowment is a pot of money that the foundation can use the interest from to fund projects. And one of her goals was to have $1 million in the BNI Foundation endowment, the Misner endowment. And so I invite you to participate in the Misner endowment. You can do it as a chapter. We allow endowed fellows as chapters. So go to bnifoundation.com and look up the endowment and find out what it takes to be an endowed fellow. You can do it individually, or you can do it. We have a number of chapters that have become Misner fellows in the BNI Foundation. Foundation is doing well. Foundation misses Elizabeth. She made a really big difference. Okay, last question, because we're at 11:02. How to copy my consistency? Oh, this is a great question to end on. I have one comment, and this is a great question to end on. You want to be successful in business? Here's the answer. If you want to be successful, I usually have something here. Yeah, I've got it. You want to be successful in business? Do 6 things 1,000 times. Not 1,000 things 6 times. It's probably one of the most important things, and entrepreneurs have a hard time with this. Entrepreneurs are constantly chasing bright, shiny objects. Ooh, look, here's something new. Let's try this. Let's try that. They do 6 things 1,000 times, and they can't figure out why they're not successful. You want to be successful in business and in life? Do 6 things 1,000 times. If I have a superpower as a business person, it is that I am a dog with a bone. I will work something and work something and work something until it works. I think it's the most important thing is consistency. Applying something you know works. Clearly what we're doing in BNI works. 10,800 chapters, meeting every week all around the world. Not only survived during COVID, we grew during COVID. It works. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't be one of those people chasing a bright, shiny object. Follow the system. All right, I'm going to end this in a minute, and I'm going to want you to all put in the comments, what did you like most? Was there anything you liked that I said? And if so, what was it? You can start doing that as I wrap up my comments. And here is the wrap up of my comments. It's about giver's gain. Giver's gain is more than a phrase to me. It's a way of living one's life. It's a perspective to view and interact with the world. It's an attitude, not an expectation. And when it's applied properly, it'll change your life. And when it changes enough lives, it will change the world. Networking is not only a great way to get business, B&I is not only a great way to get business, it's an even better way to do business. Thank you all for being here today. I love doing these. I missed doing them. I will do them again in the not too distant future. In the meantime, I'd love to hear your comments about the things that I said before we wrap up, before I hit end. I see Marilyn saying 6 things 1,000 times. 6 things 1,000 times. Inspiring people. Thank you very much, Johan. I appreciate that. Continuous learning, Partha says. One-to-ones and referrals. Howard says, meet 6 things 1,000 times. Giver's gain goes with servant leaders. Yeah, very true. Probably one of the best leadership books I've ever read was by John Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I recommend that book. VCP, Alka says, thank you. Vikash says you liked every word. Thank you, Vikash. I'm glad you liked every word. I think Dana probably has put up all of the posts. I want to, that attitude, Christine says, yes, thank you, Christine. There's so many things. I love talking to BNI members. I love pouring into BNI members. I hope you found this of value. I promise I will do this in the next few months again. This is Ivan Misner. This was the Ask Ivan session. And let me just say, you rock. Your questions were probably some of the best questions I've ever had in doing one of these. I want to thank you all. I love you very much. This is Ivan Misner. Thanks for watching.